The way we get our information today is broken. I saw this meme the other day and it made me laugh, but then I started to reflect on how frustrated I actually am with not only the quantity of information that I consume every single day, but also the quality of that information. I feel frustrated because I want to be a well-informed, thoughtful, and nuanced thinker on topics that matter to me. And yet with all the tools and information that's available to me, which is more than anyone has ever had access to in the history of the world, all I am presented with is low quality, algorithmically driven content designed to keep me engaged and keep me entertained, when what I really want is to learn and to engage with this content in a way that makes me a better person. So I've been thinking a lot about how I can change that in my own life and how I can sort of refine the information flow that is available to me and that I consume on a daily basis, and I wanted to share it. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to explain why you might also want to refine your information flow. I think some principles on how we can approach the solution, and then how we can actually define and create such a solution that maybe gets us 80 to 90% of the way there and does in fact make our lives better. So the first reason why I think it's important to create such a refined information flow is, like I touched on, the algorithms. I think we've almost forgotten nowadays how amazing phones can be. Everyone is talking about how bad phones are and how they're creating anxiety and making us disconnected, and people are quitting social media entirely or buying dumb phones which lose a lot of the great features that phones have. In reality, I love my phone. It does a lot of great stuff. What I hate is social media and the way that the mobile phone allows it to invade my consciousness and essentially poison my mind. The truth is that for curious people, the internet and the mobile phone should be the best thing ever. I was talking to a family member the other day and I was reflecting on how, being born in the 90s, I basically have no concept of what it means to ask a question and not have an answer immediately available, and how weird it must have been before that. And in theory, this should be a beautiful thing. This allows us to go broad and deep on topics that we're interested in. And I feel like as a society, we've just sort of fumbled the bag in terms of how we should be using these tools. And to be clear, I've tried pretty hard to curate my social media feeds. I've muted words and I've blocked people who I feel post low quality content that I don't want to engage with. But it just doesn't seem to work. The inflammable, high engagement content always just seems to find a way back into my feed. The next reason why I think you should create a refined information flow is because the other immediately available solutions to accessing high quality content are not exactly the same and don't provide the same benefits. I think, for example, social media is honestly an amazing aggregator. It saves so much time in terms of not having to scavenge 10 to 20 different websites to find the information that you're looking for. And the alternative is to subscribe to maybe one or two newspaper journals like the Wall Street Times or The Economist, but then you're only getting one perspective or a few journalists that are filtered through a couple of given editors. It becomes, in theory, a lot more bias. But on top of this, those subscriptions can be pretty expensive. I think The Economist's annual subscription is like 300 Canadian a year, which I'm just not gonna pay for. And the third, and what I feel is the most important reason why you should create a refined information flow, is that getting your news or getting your information from social media creates a situation where the time to quality ratio is just way off. Whether you spend your time on a social media app or on Reddit or even reading the newspaper, the information that you receive and spend the most time consuming is heavily weighted towards recency. Today's news and pundits and analysts are all focused on driving clicks and getting attention rather than providing any real insight. And honestly, I think getting any type of insight from the daily news is impossible anyway. It was Hegel who said, "It is only when actuality has reached maturity that the ideal appears. What he's saying is that it's pointless to try to make sense of current events or to project any type of moral judgment on those events until we have the full context of history to guide us. So those are the three main reasons why I think creating a more refined information flow is worth the time. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think some key principles would be to creating one and what the ideal solution would maybe look like. So the first principle that I think arises from some of the problems I just discussed is alignment. I think in a refined information flow, the information presented to me should be deeply aligned with my goals and personal interests. The second principle is proportionate. The quantity of the content that I spend time consuming should be proportionate to the lasting value of the information in that piece. So the more contingent a piece is on information that has not had enough time for the dust to settle, the less time I should spend on it. And then finally, I think the third principle in a refined information flow should be controlled. At the end of the day, I want all the information still in one spot to get that aggregation benefit, as well as the fact that I'm in control of when I access it. It doesn't have notifications or addictive features that access me and take me out of living my real day-to-day life. So I think when you put these three principles together, you can expect to get another three outcomes out of a refined information stream. The first would be depth. I think when you consume content that is aligned and you spend your time proportionately to high quality information, you're going to achieve depth in knowledge rather than consuming shallow dopamine based content. The second is that when you're consuming content that is deeply personally interesting and you have total control over when you're reading that information and how you access it, then you achieve a level of focus that you wouldn't get otherwise. And then finally, I think you achieve a better way of practicing discipline in your information consumption when you combine a proportionate amount of time spent on quality content and you have control over that content. So what that means is that you're not binging, you're not endlessly scrolling, you're not wasting hours in the evening on things that provide you no value. You get to be the boss. So hopefully at this point, I've sort of made my point clear on why you should want to do this and what a perfect solution might look like. And while there is no such thing as a perfect solution, I do think there are some easy things that we can do to achieve this outcome. And some are free and some are paid, so I'm going to go through both, and hopefully you can pick the one that best aligns with your needs. The first step is to cover the proportionate principle. We have to figure out what is actually worth consuming. And I like the concept of fast food content, referring to the sort of low value content that we all consume on a daily basis and doesn't give us any type of informational sustenance. And I think you can actually extrapolate this idea a little bit further and achieve a sort of informational food pyramid with the most important types of content at the bottom and the least important at the top. So I think a general rule of thumb we can follow here is that the longer it's taken for something to be produced, or the longer amount of time it's been since that work was published and it remains relevant, the more likely it is that it's high quality and worth our time to consume. So by this logic, I think the majority of the amount of time we should spend consuming information should be with books or with courses written by real experts, or maybe long form podcasts, but I think this can sometimes become unfocused and drift into more of the entertainment category. So you make your own judgment. I'm just throwing out the ideas. The second block in the informational food pyramid would be medium length content. So this would definitely be podcasts, maybe YouTube videos, or long form articles. And then finally, at the top of the pyramid, which is the least important and the information that we should spend the least amount of time consuming, is short form content, things like tweets or TikToks or YouTube Shorts or whatever other shallow content you can throw in here. Just try to keep in mind, this is dessert. It's fun and it's stimulating, but we probably shouldn't be consuming it every single day. So now that we have that guidance, step 2 of creating a refined information stream would be to cover alignment. And that would be to specifically pick the content that we're going to consume. Starting from the bottom of the pyramid with books, I think I want to make a video in the future specifically about finding more interesting books to read, but for now I think you can go on YouTube, you can search for recommendations in whatever topic you're interested in, and I'm sure there's plenty of great recommendations there. Or you can ask ChatGPT for some recommendations, and I'm sure it will give you a long list of those as well. Just don't fall into the trap of thinking that any given book holds the information that is gonna change your life or unlock some new form of reality. I don't know where this idea came from, but I've seen it around the internet, or at least sensed this type of vibe, and it's almost certainly not true. At the end of the day, it's just information, and what you do with it is really what matters. When it comes to medium length content, I honestly don't feel like I have a great solution for you in terms of YouTube videos and podcasts. But what I do think works well is to treat your subscriptions as sacred, to protect it, and to make sure you're only subscribing to creators who you feel add value to your life. And then to try your best to spend most of your time in the non-algorithmically curated tabs in those apps. So on YouTube, you stay in your subscriptions. In your podcasts, you stay in the What's New tab or whatever it's called in your app. And here, at least it's just chronological. It's not algorithmically driven, so you can at least stay focused that way and not become too overwhelmed with creators that you didn't give permission to access you. And then for long form articles, I do think there are some good solutions. I think the key is to find 2 to 4 sources that consistently put out great, readable, interesting content that is totally aligned with what you want to learn more with. And then subscribe to those. Keeping the subscriptions between 2 to 4 gives us some of the benefits of social media with aggregation, as well as at the same time avoiding the same type of overload or endlessly interesting information that we get through a social media feed. So spend some time doing some research and trying to find information like this. I can give a few recommendations. If you're into math and science, Quanta magazine is pretty good. For psych or philosophy, there's Psyche or Aeon. If you're into governance or economics, organizations like the OECD are pretty good. And I also like damninteresting.com for just random miscellaneous interesting content. The point is that there's a lot out there, you just have to look for it. And if you can't find anything, I would again just go to ChatGPT, tell it what you're looking for in terms of magazines or publishers or independent writers who write about the content that you want to learn more about, and check those out. What I would do is probably subscribe to a bunch of them and then ruthlessly unsubscribe as they send you content, and you decide whether or not it aligns with what you're looking for. And then finally, with the top of the pyramid, we have social media content. I don't think I need to go into this too much. What I do think is important is just finding a way or finding ways to take control of these apps rather than letting them control you. What I do is I just delete them from my phone. I don't delete my social media accounts. I give myself free rein to use these social media platforms on my laptop or on my iPad, but just restricting my usage to those devices, which is usually at home. I find I use it an unbelievable amount less. And I don't know why, but I just find that when I'm using social media on my laptop, for example, it's way less addictive. I don't know what it is about the mobile experience, but I just get bored when I'm on my laptop and then I stop using it. So that's my recommendation. And then the final thing I want to touch on is news. This is probably a little controversial, but I think news belongs in the top of the pyramid. I touched on it before, but I just feel like daily news is just so meaningless. Like when I was doing my CPA and working at a Big 4 accounting firm, there were times of the year where I was so busy, I literally didn't check the news for months, and it didn't have any effect. If anything was important, I heard about it through someone else. And you know what? It was a better experience that way. Someone comes to you and they say, "Did you hear about this thing?" And you say, "No, tell me about it." You ask them some questions and you end up having a conversation rather than if you've both read the same story and you just sort of agree on the facts. Like, I don't know, I just think it's a better way to go about your life. Okay, so I've been talking for a really long time now, but this is the last step. This is the tech stack to make this possible. And yes, it's a tech stack. We're still using the phone. Like I said before, dumb phones are stupid. No pun intended. Your phone is great. Social media is what's bad. So what we need is some sort of application that lets us enact the control principle. We need to be in control of what shows up in the app and when we can access it. And in terms of paid options, which is what I use Readwise Reader. This is the thing that everyone recommends, but there's other options out there like Feedly or InnoReader. And these are basically RRS feeds mixed with reader apps, which allow you to basically aggregate different sources and upload different content and read it there. I like Readwise because it integrates with Obsidian for my notes, and it has a cool AI feature where you can highlight text and then ask questions. Honestly, it's hit or miss. I sometimes end up just going to ChatGPT instead, but it's there and I like it. And the big thing that I really love about it is the broad amount of files that it can take in. It can take in YouTube videos, it can support EPUB files, so I can upload my books to it and read there, and then I really do just have all my information in one place, which is important to me. But it is kind of expensive. It's like $100 a year. So if you don't want to spend any money, I think what I would do is use an app like Kindle or Apple Books or whatever other book reader you can get on your phone, and I would make a folder with that and an email app, and then I would make a new email account, and then I would go on all those magazine websites or sources that you've discovered, and I would subscribe to their newsletters. And I would subscribe to the newsletters instead of the RRS feed. And this goes for if you're using an RRS feed app as well. An RRS feed is basically just a subscription to the changes on a website, and I found that whenever I try to use it, I end up getting overwhelmed once again with too much information. So again, I would keep my sources to 2 or 4, and I would just subscribe to those newsletters. That way I get one a day or one a week. I can skim through it, I can dive deeper into anything that I'm interested in, and I'm done. There's no more temptation to keep scrolling or to look into new articles that continue to pop up throughout the day. So that was probably a lot just to say read books and read articles, but my hope is that by discussing some of the principles and techniques for implementing a more refined information flow, it can help you guys sort of break away from the social media trap as well and become better informed, better thinking people. If you liked the video, please like it, please subscribe. It's my first video, but I'm going to be doing a lot more in terms of finding more uncommon book recommendations, how to find your own personal values, sharing my hobbies, and overall just trying to live a more authentic life to who you are as a person.